We will now call to order the special call meeting for the Muskogee City Council for October 19th, 2020. Roll call.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Jamie Stout.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs. Here. Alex Reynolds. Stephanie Morgan.
Here.
Tracy McGee.
Here.
Tracy Hoos.
Here.
Item number 1.
Receive report on the COVID-19 pandemic in Muskogee, and if necessary, take appropriate action to authorize and approve a subsequent amendment to Resolution Number 2801, declaring a local emergency, or City-County Joint Resolution Number 2803.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. As you're well aware, the pandemic continues in Muskogee. Mr. Tucker and other members of the City-County Task Force have been working on a public relations effort, and he's got some information to share regarding that. Tyler Evans from Emergency Management, as well as others, will have some updates on the overall condition. But with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tucker, and he can explain to you some of the things that we've done and what we're going to continue to do as far as public awareness regarding COVID-19.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. We were very happy that the city agreed to contribute to some of the expenses for this public relations project that we were interested in putting together. So with that, what we decided to do was personalize some of the effects and also some of the fatigue that many of us are feeling as we deal with COVID-19 and some of the restrictions of quarantine, staying safer at home, and things that as they relate to that. And so we contracted with Edward Venters after a competitive process to put together a series of public relations information for distribution. So the first thing, and we're going to show that tonight, was a 3-minute video which showed not only the impact that a death due to COVID-19 had on a family, but also images from some of our other community members and why they choose to wear masks when they go out into public. Information from physicians such as Dr. Stratton on the importance of protecting other people. And additionally, we had a couple of print media prepared that will be distributed publicly. We've dropped a couple of those, one with the superintendent of Muskogee Public Schools, Jared Mendenhall, which was already released, and we had a couple more with a couple of pastors that was released on Sunday appropriately. We do have a couple more that will be distributed as time goes on. And we also have a 30-second video that the final editing touches are being prepared for that. So we released the 3-minute video that we're going to show you here today on Friday, and we have already had nearly 7,000 interactions according to Facebook. And so a lot of positive comments. We've asked everyone we know to share this video, including our friends at the Health Department, our partners at the Muskogee Wellness Initiative, our friends at the Roxy, and Bare Bones, who were showing it before their movies. And we want this to be as widely distributed as possible. One of the things that we're finding in other cities where masks are mandated is people are not wanting to wear masks because they're told to. They're wearing masks because it's what they want to do. And so since the Joint Task Force, at least to this point, has not made that recommendation, we wanted to take a step further and try to personalize some of the efforts that we're doing. Now, we understand that that may change in the future, but at this point, we wanted the members of the public know that the members of the task force, which are representing the city and the county, do care about our community and want us to be safe. So with that, if we could play the video, that would be great.
We got to look out for the other guy. And, you know, you never know when you might be carrying the virus or not. You never know when you might be in the same vicinity as somebody with high risk factors. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have lung problems, that have diabetes, those are high risk factors. And, you know, so you just got to think about the other guy and think about, you know, could I be spreading the virus? Maybe. I mean, we don't know.
He was everybody's hero. Absolutely everybody's hero. My name is Adam Oglesby. I'm here to talk about my grandfather, Dr. John Oglesby from Muskogee. So he's the only physician in the state of Oklahoma that passed away from COVID-19.
We're seeing community spread of COVID, as are the rates of positivity among the people who are being tested. We see higher and higher percentages of people who are positive as we've been conducting the testing.
So every day I work case investigations and I talk to people that have COVID, and I talk to them about the symptoms. Many of them think they don't have symptoms, and as we go through, there's about 20, 23 symptoms. So you have the opportunity to put some things into place and realize that this is serious. There's people dying. There are also people that are very sick and they have no one to take care of them.
You know, I always think about our most precious commodity that we have. It's not gold, it's not money, it's really our children. So one of the things that we've also got to think about is if it's as basic as wearing a mask at home to protect your child, then let's do that. You know, whether we agree with having a mask or not, I think it's one of the bigger things is really what is the right thing to do in really protecting some of our kids against this virus. So that's kind of how I've approached it.
So I would say that the most important thing to remember in the times that we're in now, in this situation, is to be responsible, do what you ought to do to keep yourself healthy and keep everyone else healthy. Someone's father, someone's grandfather depends on it.
But let's try to go a little extra. Let's wear a mask. It's not going to hurt. It may help keep somebody from getting sick.
Muskogee and Muskogee County, we want you to be responsible and stay responsible because somebody's life might depend on it.
So, as I mentioned, this is playing on our Facebook page. It is also running on Channel 14, our government PEG channel. Will also be on our City of Muskogee YouTube page. Excuse me. So, I encourage everyone to share that as widely as possible because we want to get that message out there on behalf of the task force and continue to look back on our joint task force page and the city page as we continue to release more of the print media and another video that we're expecting to come out this next week. Happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Tucker?
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Miller?
All right, I'd like to ask Mr. Evans to come forward and give us an update on the current situation.
And good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In front of you should have the packet you're used to seeing, our COVID-19 packet. I come here with some good news. We have 171 active cases in the city of Muskogee, which is lower than the previous 3 weeks. Last Monday, we're at 205 active cases. The week before that, we're at 211, and the week before that, the week of 28th of September, we're at 183. We're at 171 today. The line graph below that kind of represents the numbers and where we're headed. If you dive a couple pages into our COVID-19 tracker system, it has a state of Oklahoma map depicting the counties. Muskogee County is currently at a 23.6. That is the percentage of positive cases per 100,000. And on the following couple of pages, you'll have your 7-day rolling averages along with the hospitalizations, death rates, case rates, so on and so forth. Also, the state report from the Washington Task Force, COVID-19 Washington Task Force, is included in this. As stated previously, this is a week behind on them publishing that report. So it'll be for October 11th was the date of that report. And on that report, they had stated that Oklahoma has seen stability in new cases and a decrease in test positivity over the last week. So that would reflect about 2 weeks ago that they're referring to. And so we're even lower in active cases than what we were 2 weeks ago. So I'm hoping this week's report is even better news than what's included in this packet. You can also see that we're now in an orange county. We're down from the red. In the previous couple of weeks, you remember me talking about the top 12 counties and where we were at in relation to on the paper. We're no longer on the paper. So I'm hoping that's a little bit better news that Muskogee County is doing better overall. Next week, I'll have this week's report, but as I stated, the Washington Task Force, they simply can't produce this report fast enough for City Council tonight. Those are usually put out on the Tuesdays or Wednesdays. If there's no questions in regards to this report, we do have Mr. Doug Walton on the line from Muskogee County Health Department, if we can introduce him.
Thank you, Tyler, Mayor and Council, and thank you for Mr. Tucker and to the members of the City County Task Force for including the County Health Department in the efforts to encourage public participation and activation in preventing the spread of COVID. We are hopeful that the messaging will be effective and that we'll continue to see numbers below our highest levels. Tyler's correct that we're seeing a kind of a steadying somewhat in the daily active cases, and we definitely hope that will continue. It won't be likely to continue unless people continue being vigilant about wearing face coverings in public and really anytime they have to be around others outside of their immediate household. And then, even then, if they happen to be in a situation where a family member is quarantined, which can be really the most difficult matter to keep a distance within a household. Yes, we're continuing to do testing at the County Health Department Monday through Thursday, free drive-through COVID testing, 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. Free flu shots on Fridays from 8:30 to 4:30, and we anticipate doing that through the remainder of October and likely into November, but we'll have to update the council on that next week for the November plans. And I think that's all I have to report. Be happy to take any questions.
Smith, will I recognize?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Walton. I'm going to ask you again, how's the nursing homes doing? Are we getting reports from them?
We are monitoring the cases within nursing homes to the extent that we can at the County Health Department. We're really just relying on the numbers that are reported at the state level. And as of the most recent executive order report from the governor's office, we've got basically 24 active cases within the county, which is down from the peak of 28 active cases about a week or even two prior. So it does look like the trend is following similar to what we're seeing for the county overall.
You said we have 24 cases. Does that include all the nursing homes, sir?
Yes, sir. That's throughout the entire county, 24 current active cases.
Okay, how about the prisons?
Pardon?
How about the prison?
I am not aware of any current outbreaks in the prison, none that we've been notified of, but that's actually, even a little bit more removed the county from the Department of Corrections, but we are not aware of any current outbreaks within the prisons at this time. I am not.
Okay, how about the hospitals?
Well, honestly, Counselor, I'm not really able to report on the current activity within the hospital system. I know that we have had members, representatives on past calls for the council who would be able to do that better than I.
Okay, because it seems to me we don't ever get a report from the hospitals. And when I watch the news on television and look at the newspaper, this virus is still going on. And these cases are still going up. But when I come up here, it's a different story. And I'm just relying on what y'all say and what the news says. And, you know, who is it? You know, who can we believe is my point. You know.
So to speak on that, I have been in contact with Mr. Kyle Coons. If you remember, he came to present here. He's one of the administrators here at our local St. Francis Hospital. I have been in contact with him on a weekly basis, talking about how our system is here. And the latest update I had from Mr. Coons was the number of positive patients in hospitals is high across statewide. They have more positive patients in beds in the St. Francis system right now than they have so far this year. Now that's the entire system for St. Francis, not just Muskogee. He says they continue to have available bed space locally and in the system. They aggressively monitor and manage the bed status hourly. The flu admissions have begun several weeks early this year, but we are not seeing people that sick in Muskogee yet, and that comes directly from our contact here with St. Francis.
What worries me is that the cases being here in Oklahoma and the hospital situation where it is, about the beds being, getting full. They can be the same here. These people may have to come to Muskogee, Oklahoma, and the people here in Muskogee, Oklahoma don't have any beds. We're in trouble. And as I see just this past week in the paper about the senators begging the governor to mandate masks. Did you see that article?
No.
Okay. But I'm just some concerns I have, personally myself. But I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Ms. Trish German from Muskogee County EMS to speak on behalf of them.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Muskogee County EMS, our call volume's coming up. Not for sure about PPE. I forgot to ask about that. I'm sure if there wasn't a supply that came in, they probably would have contacted me. Still disinfecting like we're supposed to, have the peppers out, and trying to, do what we're supposed to do to keep the community safe. We had Boo on the Flu last Friday. Big success. We gave out about 750 flu shots there at Honor Heights Park. I do have some flu shots available for people that are not able to get out of the house, elderly. If they contact Muskogee County EMS at 918-683-0130, ask for Trish. Tell them that you need a flu shot. I will come out to their house and give them a flu shot. Now, this is people that not able to get out, elderly, things like that. So if anybody needs a flu shot, contact me. We'll get out there and get them. Any questions? Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes my update. I'd like to turn the floor back over to Mr. Miller.
Nothing else from staff at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, will you recognize?
Yes.
Yes, I have an item here on this particular coronavirus. The reason I put it on there is because I feel that the times we voted no on these masks, we should have voted yes on these masks. And I looked in the paper, like I said, I'll say it again. The senators is begging the governor to do something about it, but he won't. He's depending upon us to do it as a municipality. And we go to these events we have here in Muskogee. I went to Jeep Jam. And then, it's good to make money, but money's not going to do you any good when you're 6 foot under. And what I seen with Jeep Jam was people, no mask, on city facilities, no mask. I didn't get to go to the drag racing this weekend, because I had some other obligations, but I asked some people that went. And same thing. It's just like it's nothing. It's not here. As people here, another thing I done today, I went on the school bus. And The kids got out of school. That's what they had on, getting on that school bus. They had the windows down on the bus because so the air can circulate. Those students, I commended the Muskogee Public Schools for having them do that because that's their life. That's our kids. That's somebody else's kids. And it just made me feel good to see them kids step on that bus from grade school to 7th and 8th graders to Muskogee High. They all had masks on when they got on that bus and when they was waiting at that bus stop. I was impressed. And you just think about anybody in here that has a family member, and we all have kids and we all have family. And if our family come down with this, it would hurt us. We'd be sad. We'd be, why come we didn't do something about it? And we have the opportunity tonight to do something about it. Wearing these masks, they even got fashionable now. You know, people's got all kind of designs and stuff on them, you know, but this is to protect me. When I wear this mask, that protects me from you, or you from me. And I don't mean anything about it when I'm trying to get this mask mandate passed here in Muskogee. It's because just to protect our citizens here and our children. Because we don't want to have to go to funerals, you know, and it's sad to say if we have to. So Roy has a little presentation he would like to make on my behalf. And I just want y'all to really think about it tonight, because this stuff is very, very serious here in Muskogee. And you still have restaurants that still haven't opened. You take an example, Chick-fil-A. They don't let you go in there. Whoever who runs that place, that CEO or whoever it is, I commend him, you know, because like I say, it's dangerous. So Mr. Tucker, if you would, can you take over for me?
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Van. As Councilor Van mentioned, he had asked me to prepare a Fifth Amendment to Resolution 2801, which, as you all know, is our original resolution where we declared the emergency. So the relevant provisions relating to what we're going to talk about today is on the last page of that resolution, and it does include a provision to make mask wearing mandatory. So I do have a presentation because sometimes it's a lot easier to look at proposed language on the screen rather than have me read it to you. So I thought this would be an easier approach to do. So the general rule, of course, in the resolutions is that all persons will wear face coverings when they're outside any indoor place open to the public, or in any location where maintaining 6 foot of social distance between individuals not of the same household is impractical. Face coverings are defined as a uniform piece of material that securely covers the person's nose and mouth and remains fixed in place without the use of the person's hands and or a face shield. The face coverings, as defined, should fit snugly and comfortably to allow breathing and without restrictions. So that's the general rule. So the proposed resolution includes a number of exceptions. And these track what Oklahoma City and Tulsa did in their mask mandates as well. Again, these are things that you have seen before, so none of these things are new. But I did want to go ahead and put them up in writing so you could see them. So the exceptions, and these would be exceptions to whom the mandate would apply. And so individuals who fall within the CDC guidance for those who shouldn't wear face masks, such as those with mental health or medical conditions or developmental disabilities, children under 18, restaurant patrons while they're eating, persons exercising in communal outdoor spaces or walking with other persons in their household, so long as physical distancing can be maintained, persons congregating in communal outdoor spaces with others not in their same household should wear face coverings when physical distancing is not being maintained. And so this is not intended to require individuals who are outside for any means to have to wear a face mask, but only when social distancing cannot be maintained. Additional exceptions, occupants in settings where it's not practical or feasible to wear a face covering, such as dental services, medical treatments, or while swimming. As many of you have heard us talk about in the past, anytime the mask gets wet, it harbors the breathing and makes it much more difficult. And so masks are not advised to be worn when there's likelihood that they will get wet. Additionally, occupants in personal vehicles, personal offices, or similarly private spaces while other persons outside of their household are not present. So this is the exception. If you're alone, you don't need to wear a mask, obviously. Residents in private homes, this proposal would not, this does not go as far as Norman's does. You may have seen that recently where they've regulated in-home mask wearing when you have gatherings within your own home. This does not do that. And then occupants of offices and workplaces that are generally not considered to be open to the public, especially where physical distancing can be maintained among workers. And so those are the exceptions to the general rule that we talked about earlier. Like what we've talked about previously when this was presented, there is no general penalty. So when we talked about Oklahoma City and Tulsa, their penalties were minimal, if any. The real penalty is if someone is in a business and they are asked to wear a mask and they refuse, and then they are asked to leave and they refuse, then that can turn into a trespass charge. And depending on what else happens, it could result in a disorderly conduct. But failing to wear a mask in and of itself is not a separate criminal violation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but this proposal is what is in front of you. And it is similar to the one that you have seen before. We've cleaned up a little bit of the language to make it a little more clear, but the substance has not changed.
One thing I'd like to say also, I commend the task force for that video you done just a while ago. I commend them. You see those gentlemen we're talking about, we need face coverings. And I had a friend that's in Tulsa, and he had a gathering at his home, no mask, just a little small birthday party for his kids. That whole family got sick. And that's what I mean. You know, it can be 5, 6, 10 people. You're at a risk when you're around that. And these gatherings that we're having here in Muskogee, with all these people around wearing masks, without wearing masks, and they're coming from other parts of, not only Oklahoma, but from other places here. I'm pretty sure they're bringing stuff in here. And it's just sad. We'd rather risk our lives to have fun than to think about our health and our children's risk from catching it from us or other people. You know, so I think council and mayor, we need to really think about this tonight. You know, because like I say, I don't mean no harm. We're just trying to protect each other and slow this stuff down here in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and do the right thing. Do what's right. That's all I ask. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor, or you need me to make the motion.
That's at the pleasure of you or Mr. Tucker.
Well, it would be his pleasure.
I'd like to make a motion that we mandate mask wearing here in the city of Muskogee without penalty of anybody getting fined in order to protect ourselves, our families, and our citizens. That is my motion.
And so that would be to approve the proposed Fifth Amendment to Resolution 2801, which incorporates all those things you just said.
Yes, sir.
We have a motion from Mr. Van. Do we have a second?
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Before we entertain further discussion from the council, one of the questions I've always had about mandates, particularly for Muskogee, is enforceability. And the reason why I'm concerned about that is because I know in Oklahoma City they have over 1,100 police officers, and they have fines associated with their mandate, but they don't seem to be able to enforce the masks or be able to keep their numbers down. With Tulsa, they've got over 700 police officers and a mask mandate, and they don't seem to be able to enforce it or to keep their numbers down. In fact, in particular, Tulsa openly said that they couldn't enforce theirs. So I do agree on the concern aspect, but also I'm concerned about how would we enforce it here in Muskogee, given the fact that they've got robust officers on staff, and we just have, I think, a little over 80 police officers in Muskogee. That's my only concern when we talk about enforceability of a mask mandate.
You ever heard of biting off just a little piece of apple, Mayor Coleman? We just taking a little bite tonight. If we mandate this, we can always take another bite of how to get this mandated so people can get their attention. We're just trying to take a little piece of bite of this apple tonight. That's it. You know, we can always go back later as a council and as a mayor to do something different. That's just my thought.
Okay. Do we have any other comments from the council on tonight?
Mr. Tucker, if a business chooses to not put on a mask, because I mean here it says trespassing and a patron goes into that business and there's a mandate and they ask that business to put on the mask, what happens then?
There's no penalty. So there would be no, so a business could, without a penalty, a business could choose to decide whether or not to enforce it or not. I think it's your question.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm not real sure. I mean, if we're gonna, if you really want to do a mandate, I think that you're asking the citizens to do it, and if they're on a public place, I'm going to have all the citizens do it. But if a business doesn't want to do it, you know, that's serving the public, that kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I really think that that's where our spreaders are at. You know, you look at some restaurants that you said that are abiding by the rules, which I think is fantastic. I mean, you look at those that are social distancing and all their wait staff has on masks and even some of their cooks have on masks. Then you go to other restaurants and, you know, people are really packed in there. And I just don't see how you say it's taking a bite out of the apple. And I agree with you. I think it's kind of, you know, with what data's showing how masks help people now. You know, the deaths are going down. They think the deaths are going down because of COVID, because people aren't getting the viral load. What we know now is that how sick you get is how much of the virus you get exposed to. And we actually are showing a lot of good data that's saying that the mask, that there was this preconceived notion that, well, our deaths are going down because America's found the right treatment. Well, they really think our deaths are going down because more people are wearing masks and people that are getting sick aren't getting these huge viral loads like they were earlier. That's why with this second peak that they had, with the death rates were a little bit better than the first wave. So I do think that there is coming a point whenever we need to look at a mask mandate. But if we're just going to say, you know, if you're out playing tennis on the park, you have to have a mask on. But if you're going to go from there into this restaurant where no one's wearing a mask, I think that that's the part that doesn't make sense to me very much. I mean, I guess they can choose to not go into that place, choose to not go into that facility. But I really think that if you're looking at a mask mandate and you really want to protect the public, you got to look at it from businesses that are serving the public, because the last thing that we want to do is get to a point to when the governor is saying, oh, you know, your county's up to, you know, 35% positive rate, we're going to shut down all your non-essential businesses. We don't want to get back to that point. And they think that our surge is going to be in 5 to 6 weeks. And so that's just my problem kind of with this. I do think that masks, we need to look at some real solutions. And I do think that, you know, taking a bite of this apple, but I just don't understand that concept.
So just to clarify one other thing, Dr. Hughes, if we did choose to impose penalties, it would not be by resolution. We would need to develop an ordinance to do that, which we certainly can do, but that would just be the next step in order to impose any kind of penalties.
And I think that's something that has to be really planned out very good. I don't think you're just going to come up that we're just going to start penalizing people and put officers and citizens in situations they don't need to be in. But we also need to, I think, level the playing field with some of these businesses that are losing money because they're trying to help out, and other businesses that I feel like that are not. And I mean, the data shows you can't argue against the science, you can't argue against the data. Masks do help. So that's just kind of where I'm at on this right now. So
I have a quick question for you, Dr. Hughes.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about what's been going on here in Muskogee, all these activities we've been having with thousands of people and no mask on?
I think that the way I look at that is that they have a choice to go to those. it's a lot different than the person that has to go to work, that they have to go to work to make a living. They don't have to go to Jeep Fest. You know, and same things. They don't have to go out to eat. But that waitress that works at that restaurant has to go to work. And it'd be really nice if we were able to protect that person that has to go to work. But on going to Jeep Fest, I mean, that's their choice. I haven't, you know, I've went to events, but I haven't went to these big, you know, huge events. And that's just because, you know, that's just where I'm at. I mean, I don't want to get sick. I don't want any of my family to get sick. But, you know, I have the choice to not go to those big events. Same thing with weddings. I'd have a choice not to go to a wedding. If they're not going to wear a mask, you know.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Dr. Hughes, I respect your opinion, but my opinion is just a little different. I disagree with you. I know you're a doctor and everything, but also listen to the doctors on TV, that scientists and stuff that are right also, and look at different reports that's in the paper every day about how these cases are still, you look at the newspaper, the cases are still going up.
They're going up. In Muskogee, we went down a little bit this week, but it's kind of, it will go back up. But what I'm saying is that with this mandate, I kind of see it, and I see like we're going to put these rules out, and I guess I'm not quite, Mr. Tucker, I'm not quite, I mean, you know, if there's someone on the city park, there's a small group of there, 7, is the city going to, how's the city going to enforce that? Is that going to be trespassing if they refuse to leave?
No, that, as I said, there are no penalties.
No penalties, no enforcement.
Yeah.
So,
Really
but like you said, it's a small bite.
I mean, what we've done so far with what we've got with our city facilities and, you know, the requirement of masks is posting signs, advising people when they
Correct.
come in, wear a mask, things like that.
Correct.
One thing I can say is up to the mayor and the council. I mean, you know, whether y'all, you know, want to mandate it or not. I'm just, like I say, I've tried and tried, but it's up to y'all. Let your conscience be your guide.
One thing I did want to add, Counselor Van, you have asked the number of cases at a prison, at the prisons here. Meanwhile, I talked with the public relations person at DOC, Jessica Brown, and she did indicate that there are no active cases at either Jess Dunn or Eddie Warrior as of today. So,
Good. That's great news for you.
Turn the floor back to you, Mr. Mayor.
I think all of us would agree, along with a number of mayors across the state, that in the absence of a coordinated state effort from the governor's task force, we're going to continue to work against each other county by county, because the sad thing, alluding to some of what Dr. Hughes was stating, is that unless we have a uniform approach at a larger level, you know, it's going to be hard to fight the disease in a way that we're winning. For example, Muskogee County has a mask mandate, but Wagner County does not. Those people are still going to travel over here like we'll travel over there. And so I'm always hopeful and prayerful that the governor's task force will at some point see the wisdom of presenting a more unified state plan so that all of us could follow the same guidelines similar to when he implemented those phases. Any other discussion from the council? We have a motion and a second.
One more question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this, and I'm not going to say no more about it. I won't bring this question up again. If the governor said today, mandated, would you be for it?
If he said it today, we wouldn't have any choice.
Wouldn't have any choice, right? But I'm just saying, if he said it, wouldn't have any choice. Even if we did have any choice, would you rather for the governor to say it tonight?
I'd rather the governor say it because it would be a more unified approach. It wouldn't be alienated to Muskogee County. He wouldn't spot counties like we wouldn't spot zone when we do zoning requirements. It's got to be uniform so that everybody can follow it if it's going to be effective. And so if the governor came down with the edict similar to what he did with the phases, as cities, whether we agreed with him or not, we'd have to follow those orders.
You answered my question. Thank you. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Tracy Hous,
We'll vote yes.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan,
No.
Alex Reynolds,
No.
Evelyn Hibbs,
No.
Jamie Stout,
No.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed,
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
No.
You have 5 noes.
5 noes. Item does not carry. Item number 2.
Consider approval of resolution number 2834, amending the City of Muskogee, Oklahoma municipal budget for fiscal year 2020-2021, providing for additional revenues and expenditures to the Hotel Motel Fund, Muskogee Redevelopment Authority, Muskogee Civic Center, and Hatbox Enterprise Funds, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, Mayor and members of council, this is a follow-up to last week's discussion on tourism. The idea was to take what we talked about in outline form last week and apply it to a budget amendment so that we could commit the resources along the line that the council so wished. So that is a somewhat complicated process, and so we've got a PowerPoint here we'd like to pull up to kind of walk it through. As I do, I want to say that there's a couple of different things before you. One are the budget amendments that are in your packet. The second one, thank you, Mr. Tucker. The second one is one that I've handed out to you tonight. Both of them are interpretations of what was presented last week. And so what you have before you on the handout tonight is an interpretation that makes sure all the money flows through the Roxy Trust or the Tourism Trust first before it is allocated, which I understand was the intention, rather than going directly to city venues. It flows to the trust first and then back to those venues on a case-by-case basis. So let me walk through the budget amendments. And as we do, this again is reflective of the plan that you guys discussed and voted on last week. And so there's 4 different budget amendments, and the money comes in as tax money, hotel motel tax. So it comes in. This is basically, we've seen a better revenue projection, better revenue results and projection for the rest of the year. So this gives us more money to allocate, about $175,000 of additional revenue. This budget amendment on Exhibit A allocates that money to the Redevelopment Authority Trust. So once the Redevelopment Authority Trust has that money, the budget amendment that you see then, Exhibit B, accepts those revenues from the Hotel Motel Tax Fund. It repurposes and redirects money that was originally to the chamber contract. Instead, goes to the Roxy Trust, the Tourism Trust. Then the total allocation combined of the 175 and the 200 is $375,000. Then, based off the discussion last week, some of that money is set aside for Civic Center and Hatbox tourism projects that have to be approved by the Roxy Trust on a case-by-case basis. So that then allows these 2 budget amendments are basically accepting the money at the Civic Center and accepting the money at Hatbox for tourism-related events that are approved by the overall Tourism Trust. So this allows us to do all those things. Again, this is a partial year budget. We only have about 8 months left in the fiscal year. It would be kind of effective November 1st when the tourism transitions from our contractor with the chamber to the newly named Tourism Trust. And Mr. Tucker is working on several documents, I believe, that we'll look at next week to deal with that trust. But the budget amendment really allows people to start making commitments and start putting programs together. And that's really what we want to do, is how can we make tourism better and do it better in the future? Having the money allocated along the lines that the council has indicated allows those plans to go forward. So these are the budgetary numbers that go with the plan that was presented last week. We're happy to answer any questions. We do recommend approval as it appears to mirror what was set out for last week.
What is the total amount now with the new projections?
The total amount of
The
hotel
remainder-
motel tax,
The remainder, you said there were additional funds. Are we still talking about 375,000?
375,000, yes.
Okay, so I want to be clear. All 375,000 is being transferred to the newly created Muskogee Tourism Authority.
That's correct. That's,
Is that with allocations or without allocations, Marlon?
Well, we had said last week that we wanted the Muskogee Tourism Authority to be certain that they set aside funds for those city venues such as Hatbox and Civic Center, for example, to be able to make their appeal for events or venues that they may have that can come up over the next 8 months. That was my understanding. Is that council's understanding?
Yes.
yes, and that was the dollar amount that was set aside. Those two, the 27,750 and the 103,500 add up to the dollar amount.
And I also want to state that to the Muskogee Tourism Authority that in the event, and I think I'm correct in this understanding, Mr. Tucker, in the event that those venues do not use all of those funds can still be redistributed and repurposed for tourism within the Muskogee Tourism Authority. So let's say 200,000. Let's take a big number. Let's say 200,000 is set aside for venue development, events, attractions at Hatbox. They only use 50,000. The other money can be used for tourism purposes.
Correct. Okay.
Not without a further budget amendment, because as you're sending the money over, you're restricting it.
Okay.
Based on what you've done today.
But they can make the request through us
sure.
to say we need to make a budget amendment because we're not using those funds. It seems to be underperforming, and we can still accomplish the goals of tourism.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
No, I agree, I concur, and I think also you consider that on an annual basis because we'll do another budget here in a few months for next July 1.
Right.
And so if the money's not allocated, it would be available for rebudgeting. Absolutely.
Prior to us going this route, did the Civic Center and the Parks and Recreations have to go through the chamber for their projects?
So two things. One, the Hatbox directly received funding from the city. It did not go, they did for different events go to the chamber, but last year their budget from tourism was $185,000. It was directly funded from the hotel motel tax fund by the city council. And Civic Center did not have a tourism budget last year. These are for projects that were identified in the process when we were developing the in-house tourism plan, and there were presentations. Mr. Cruz is here and Mr. Wilkinson are here that can answer questions if needed about ideas and proposals and events that they could do that are tourism related. But short answer to your questions, the Civic Center did not have a tourism budget prior. The Hatbox Enterprise did, and it was greater than it would be even with this money directly given to Hatbox Enterprise. As you know, all the tourism budgets took a significant cut this year, except for the Hall of Fame and the Batfish and the Three Rivers Museum.
So this third-party trust will have the power to veto, deny requests that may come in from these city venues?
The way this is presented, that would be the case, yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion from the council or a motion to approve the budget amendment?
Move for approval as amended.
Second.
It has been properly motioned and second. Do we have discussion before I call for the vote? Roll call.
Tracy Hoos.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
No.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes. The item passes. That will conclude the special call meeting.
No,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Item number 3.
Receive a report from the Muskogee Police Department to recognize community members for their assistance during an armed robbery on October 7, 2020, and take necessary action.
We want to be certain as a city that we take all of the proactive measures we can to highlight when we have something good that happens, be it police-related or just civilian-related. We did have an episode at the Game X Exchange. It was an armed robbery. Roy, you clicking?
Oh, sorry, I've got it. My apologies. Go right ahead, sir.
And this is a timeline that you can see on your visual of when the initial call took place, as well as the events that happened associated with that call. 10:54, dispatch. 10:54 again, suspect description is given. 10:59, first officer arrives on the scene. And I'm not going to go through all of these timelines verbatim, but the point that we're trying to make is the swiftness at which the suspect was apprehended, associated with the community involvement, with the community individuals that were involved with providing information to the police officers to have this person apprehended. The person in the community was the one who actually provided the vehicle that was able to be then traced and apprehend that suspect. When the vehicle was found, it was unoccupied, and this is the suspect that was taken into custody. And I'm going to, before I say anything to, before I give the floor over to Chief Teehee, one of the things that I do want to say is that this highlights a further need in our community to have community and police officers working together when we have something to go wrong in our city. It is no secret because that we've had a homicide recently here in the city. As we go forward as a community to try to make Muskogee great, we have to demonstrate the capacity for the community and law enforcement to be able to come together to make Muskogee a better place. So let me take this opportunity to thank that individual who provided the photo of the vehicle, and also to thank Chief Teehee and his staff. Certainly with everything going on with the Supreme Court ruling, their hands are not only occupied, but somewhat tied in what they can do to enforce rule of law here in our city. But certainly when they are able to do it and do it as well as it was done with the assistance of the community, I want to take the opportunity to give them thanks. And so, Chief Teehee, if there's anything I did not cover or something that you'd like to address, certainly you're welcome to speak to that at this time.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The main thing I wanted to do tonight was just to recognize Mr. Fletcher. Michael Fletcher's here. I just want to say thank you for what you did. Typically, whenever we have something going on that's of serious magnitude, I will text the city manager, the assistant city manager, and the city attorney to let them kind of know what's going on. And because of Mr. Fletcher's assistance in this case, getting us that picture, and then the officer doing his work, which was immediately getting that out to our CROs, investigators, and other members on the patrol division, all of that work, that by the time I literally got the text sent out, we had somebody in custody. And that doesn't happen very often. So kind of like what you said, this is just an opportunity to emphasize to the community that we can do good things and we can do it quick if we have their assistance. So to Mr. Fletcher, I appreciate you being here, and thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for?
One thing I do want to compliment the police on this as well is there was several different officers and different units within the police department working together very quickly. You'll notice from the timeline it's about 30 minutes or less from an armed robbery being reported to the person being apprehended, 3 miles away. And that took our patrol officers acting well, it took our citizens acting well, it took our community resource officers were part of that. Everyone working together to solve a violent crime in 30 minutes. And that's a big deal. So I did want to point those things out as well. Forgive me for interrupting.
No problem.
And it's a very good possibility that he went to the mall to commit another robbery. So that's very, very much something that also helped to stop that from happening. So anything else?
Any questions or comments regarding this presentation? Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the end of the special call meeting. That meeting is adjourned.
Called into order the Finance Committee meeting for October the 19th, 2020. Before we get into our agenda items, we have a proclamation by Mayor Coleman at this time.
We want to take this opportunity as a city to recognize Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm going to read this proclamation, and then I'm going to present it to Evelyn Hibbs, who is the director of the Women in Safe Houses, as well as the coordinator for Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in the city of Muskogee. Whereas the problem of domestic violence crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers, and it is sustained by societal indifference. And whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and or abuse. And whereas victims should have help to find needed compassion, comfort, and healing, should have access to medical and legal services, counseling, transitional housing, and other supportive services so that they can escape the cycle of abuse. And whereas WISH has had contact with 530 victims of domestic violence, provided shelter to 116 women, 2 men, 90 children, and helped 61 home-based domestic violence victims in 2020. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Marlon J. Coleman of the City of Muskogee, hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Council who would like to, please join me on the floor as I present Ms. Hibbs with this proclamation. It's okay to clap. Thank you so kindly for all of you. Jamie and I are not selfish if some of you others would like to. At the walk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, at the wall. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Finance Committee Chairman has also given me permission to read the flyer highlighting the walk, which will take place on Thursday, October 22nd. It is the Walk in Her Shoes walk. It's time to break the cycle. We will lineup starts at the courthouse at 11:15. The walk starts at 11:45 to the Civic Center. The program will begin at noon. We're asking all of us who can to please participate. Gentlemen and ladies are asked, strut your stuff, ride your bike, or walk your dog. Help raise awareness of domestic violence. Many of us who participated last year walked literally in her shoes. We wore the heels and at great risk to our knees and ankles, but we were very happy to be able to do that to raise awareness to this very serious issue. Thank you very much.
All right.
Chairman, can I add to that?
Yes.
We also have Connor State College and the Muskogee High School cross-country teams will be relaying to the event. Connors is going to be running from Warner all the way to Muskogee, and the high school is going to run from the high school over to the Civic Center as well. So we're excited to have their participation in the event this year.
Thank you. Agenda item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of October 5th, 2020.
Reviewing the minutes, are there any corrections or addition to our finance minutes?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Agenda item number 1 passes. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments September 26, 2020 through October 9, 2020.
Do we have a report from the purchasing committee?
Yes, the purchasing committee did meet this afternoon, and we approve all claims. I move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve our claims list. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 2 passes. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval to award a contract to Morgan Services Company, LLC, DBA Morgan Towing and Recovery, to provide towing services for the City of Muskogee's vehicles and equipment, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Swifton?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First of all, I'd just like to extend a special thanks to all the towing companies that reviewed our request for proposal and took the time to just review over it and consider it, and a special thanks to those that did submit a proposal. Secondly, I would just like to state for the record for clarification that this is just for the city-owned vehicles and equipment. This does not have anything to do with impound or the rotation towing vehicles. So with that, just to ensure that we better follow our purchasing policies, that we ensure consistency without the city, we ensure that we are getting the best price for our towing requests, and to be consistent, we did go out for proposals to provide towing services for our city-owned vehicles. We did receive 3 bids. Those proposals were reviewed and scored, and Morgan Towing Services were the best proposal and the lowest price. Just a little bit of background data. We request about 100 towing services annually at an annual cost of somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000. And those are for vehicles that break down on the side of the road, something that we go on a service call for and deem that we just need to bring that back to the shop to perform those services in the garage instead of on the side of the road. Or if we just need to simply tow something that could have been a piece of equipment donated for a special project and we need to return that piece of equipment. So those is a little bit of background on why we use those towing services. So with that, we do recommend approval of a contract with Morgan Towing Services to provide those for the remainder of this fiscal year, and it will have a 3-year renew option if both parties agree. Be happy to answer any further questions.
Any questions for Mr. Swifton? We have a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve this agenda item. Any final discussion? Roll call, please.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Abstain.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Definitely yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Colin.
Yes.
Item number 3 passes. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval of final pay application for tank mixing and aeration improvements to Mcclure Energy Solutions for mixing and aeration of Honor Heights and Radio Hill reservoirs in the amount of $40,055.68, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is a final pay app for Mcclure. This was a $344,000 project, and this was to put aeration in mixing in our 2 storage tanks, the one on Radio Hill and the one at Honor Heights. This is one of the steps in the process to help us with our notice of violations that we have to put out, and we've had to put out since 2016, because in the southwest quadrant of town we have a problem with our THMs and HAA5s. And by the way, if you have any specific questions for that, I've got my 2 water experts over here to help with it. But this process of aeration and mixing helps keep that water fresh. The problem that we discovered when we had Cowan Group come in and do our water model is that we actually have aged water that stays in the system around Radio Hill, particularly in the area of 54th and Border. So one of the things we're doing, we're constructing a new transmission water line, which is that 30-inch line that's currently under construction that goes down the trail on the west side of town near Martin Luther King Street. That transmission line is going to take the place of the 24-inch that is over closer to Court Street. So it's moving the transmission line further to the north. And the way our water system works, those transmission lines take water up to our towers, but as it goes to the towers, it also feeds into the community. So the Honor Heights Tower is actually producing water for more appropriately 75% of the town. And by moving this transmission line north, that's going to force some of that water to come from that Radio Hill tower which will then help cure that aged problem that we have in our system, which will help get us out of the NOVs and the notice of violations. That is what the water model report stated it would do, and that's what we expect to happen when we get these projects completed. Any further questions you have on the NOVs or the water quality? Stephen and Keith are here. Keith Lumpkin, I don't know if you know, is our new water plant superintendent. I don't know if you guys have had time to meet him, but the water plant produces an excellent quality of water, and what we need to do is get our distribution straightened out. So again, I do recommend approval, and we'll try to answer any of your questions.
Any questions? We have a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 4 passes. Item number 5, please.
Consider approval of lowest and best bid from Whitting Hill Disposal Services Incorporated for $2.19 per square foot for the Community Development Block Grant and the City of Muskogee Foundation Demolition Project Bid Group 41, or take other necessary action.
Ms. Callahan.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. This is our standard demolition bid packet. It is bid group 41, and this is funding that we'll use. This will be a project that will have funding from our Community Development Block Grant, the City of Muskogee Foundation, city match funds, and I understand there's some CIP funds. We did receive 2 bids after advertisement in the paper as required, and also we mailed out notices, and the bid packet was available online. The 2 bids received were from Whitting Hill Disposal Services at $2.19 a square foot, and then we had 5-Star Demolition at $2.38 a square foot. These are the lowest bids that we've received in I don't know how many years, so it's really good to see the bids come in this low, that we'll be able to get more work done and at a better rate for the residents and citizens if they are able to pay their portion. The staff does recommend awarding bid group 41 to Whitting Hill Disposal at the $2.19 a square foot, and purchasing committee also recommended approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Callahan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes.
This Whitting Hill, is that the one we're using right now? We used last year?
They were the last ones, yes.
They do a good job?
Very good job. We're very pleased with them.
All right.
And I will say that 5-Star Demolition has done private work, and we're very pleased with what work they've done. We would not have been a problem to have awarded to them too. So it's just based on the price and the best and lowest.
Just making sure they've done a good job, Ms. Callahan. Yes. Thank you. Turn the floor back over, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Did we get a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this agenda item. Roll call, please.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
That concludes our Finance Committee meeting.
I'd like to call to order the Public Works Committee, October 19th, 2020. Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of October 5th, 2020.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Tracy Hous.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of the City of Muskogee Historic District Unified Design Guidelines, or take other necessary action.
Ms. Callahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. This is before you. It does not. This one requires action that we're bringing before you what is called the Unified Muskogee Historic District Unified Design Guidelines. And the guidelines are intended to provide homeowners, landlords, contractors, and anyone wishing to work with properties in historic districts clear guidance for renovating or repairing such properties. The guidelines are based on the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation of historic properties. And this is the code the Commission follows to determine certificates of appropriateness for renovations and other work done to the exteriors of a property. So the rehabilitation is defined as the process of returning a property to the state of utility through repair or alteration, which makes possible an efficient contemporary use while preserving those portions of the features of the property which are significant to its historic, architectural, and cultural values. So while they're not trying to take anything away from the repairs and the renovating and bringing properties into the 21st century to be able to be used properly, they do want the repairs to be maintaining the historical integrity of the neighborhood and the areas. So as you'll see in the guidelines, it's mostly an informational book, and it's the wording is recommendations and guides. They start with explaining the districts, also how to become a district, how to become a historic property, and forms to fill out for the certificate of appropriateness, the explanation of the Secretary's rehabilitation standards, and the designs that are within the historic districts, which gives some education on some of the really significant properties that are in Muskogee that sometimes we forget to appreciate. And the design guidelines actually will start on page 23. It's a little over 5 pages. And none of them are mandates. There are just suggestions. On page 23, you'll see final siting should be avoided. Can it be? Not always, but it should be. And they try to have the standards to where you bring the structure back up to its original look and architectural integrity. There's also at the back, you'll see that we indicate, we show the historic districts that we have in town. These guidelines are only for the residential districts. They do not, they won't be guided for the commercial districts or even the residential of the Y district, Sadler district, some of those. And, but we always follow the Secretary of Interior standards when we do any certificate of appropriateness for any exterior work to historic properties. So the Historic Preservation Commission worked several months. Alex, is that right? That was always on the agenda, as Alex serves on our commission. And we had several other commission members that would like to have been here, but chose not to due to the number of people in the building and the COVID. So they are in full support of it, and they did recommend approval on the September 15th meeting. And staff does recommend approval also. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
Madam Chair, Ms. Callahan, I just want to be certain that these are recommendations only.
Oh, yes. There's nothing that mandates anything that can be done. I know that some communities, maybe across the country, because the Secretary of Interior standards are for the national, it goes across the United States. Their standards are what guides the commissions. Some commissions may have guidelines that would then say you can only have a certain paint color, you can only have a certain window, you can only, those sorts of mandates. There are none of those in here.
Is it clear to staff that these are recommendations? Because the last thing we would want to see as a committee is to have people following up on gripes and complaints when they don't know the rule of law or the matter of fact.
Right, and what these guidelines, what they're hoping with this book is that it'll then be distributed to the people that are in the neighborhood, and also left with the abstract and title companies at closings if there are historic properties are purchased or transacted within these historic districts. They're given the guidelines, and any of the work done on the exterior comes before the commission if they're in a historic district or a historic property, and all of those are looked at individually, and it is based on what can be done monetarily and for the structures look also.
Because I would never want a young family to be in a situation where they need to do something to their home, but they're so bound by guidelines that they cannot.
Exactly. It would be like telling someone, no, you can't put heat and air, central heat and air in your house because it's historic. That just isn't feasible. So it's one of those that it's looked at individually, and then they'll work with them if there's a way that it maybe could be done to where it's in the back of the house rather in the front so that it's not seen from the curb.
So when we say they'll work with them, will they provide the funding?
No, unfortunately not. We don't have that funding, but there are the historic tax credits for the National Register districts, which both of these are, but that is something that they have to work with the State Historic Preservation Office on getting their tax credits paperwork done.
Thank you.
I would love for I'm sorry, I said I would love for there to be funding, but it just doesn't seem to be out there yet. Sorry.
Roll call.
Tracy Hous,
Yes.
Tracy McGee,
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan,
Yes.
Alex Reynolds,
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs, Jamie Stout,
Yes.
Ivory Van,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed,
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Item number 3, please.
Receive report on Historic Preservation Commission projects from the Certified Local Government Grant Funds and take necessary action.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm back. We're still here. This is the kind of our presentation on what we have done with our Certified Local Government Grant Funds. As with everything, COVID changed our scope of work. And we had initially planned to do a conference that would have taken in or been open to adjoining states, and the state was going to work with us on doing what they called a camp, which is a training for preservation commissions and anybody that's interested in historic preservation. As we weren't able to do that, and at the last minute we decided we did not want to lose the funding that we match, and to be able to get that opportunity for funding, is that we worked very fast to finalize the design guidelines, and the printing for those were done, and then the other projects that were done, which I left with you. We had the coloring book that was reprinted. We had pages added to that. Our code enforcement brochure was reprinted, updated, make sure they had the right phone number and the information. And then there was also a National Register brochure, and that was what I also left with you. And there's some outside if anybody's welcome to them, and then we'll have them available downstairs for citizens and try to get them distributed as best we can. But those are the projects that we had. And one of the other ones from the year before was a consultant that we hired that did the National Register nomination. And they did receive, the Founders Historic District did receive their certificate. And as I said, as well, with COVID, we didn't have the formal presentation, but I will be giving it to them, and they can also let their association know that they've received their certificate. So they have gotten that from the national parks. It is the listing on the National Register of Historic Places. And that's all I have.
Madam Chair. Ms. Callahan, does this new brochure incorporate the changes that Mr. Tucker had brought to our attention several weeks back regarding being certain that we were more clear in terms of what can be considered a violation?
Yes, that one follows our property maintenance code that we've adopted, the 2015.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Callahan, this one here,
Yes.
I think this ought to be sent out in the water bills to all the citizens of Muskogee. I mean, I'm just a suggestion,
Yeah.
I mean, because give them information, because it looks like it's very good information in this brochure.
It's one that the residents, especially Founders, because they have a really good established association, a group, and they take it door to door. They leave it.
What I'm
So
saying
it's
is,
very well used, but
what I'm saying is, it needs to be more than just Founder's Place. It needs to be the whole city of Muskogee, so it can get to looking like Founder's Place, is what I'm saying.
yes.
What do you think, Mr. Miller?
I'm taking notes as we speak, so.
Okay. I don't think this is a nice brochure. We put a lot of things in the flyers, in the mail, in our water bills. This definitely needs to be to every citizen.
One change would be that it does have a phone number, and which is easy for those to call in, maybe not receive a code enforcement officer, but it doesn't have that link to the Citizen Action Center that we might change out and add to that if we were going to do it in the water bill. Because I think with the Citizen Action Center, those complaints or issues are tracked and monitored more so than just calling in. But it does give an option for calling into code enforcement.
Thank you, Ms. Callahan. I'll turn the floor back over to you, Ms. Chairman.
Madam Chair, I just want to add to Councilor Van's point. One of the benefits to the residents having access the way he presented it tonight would be that as we get ready to ramp up towards an aggressive spring cleanup, we want the residents to all be well aware in advance of that, what they should and should not do in terms of helping us to be certain we have a more beautiful Muskogee.
Yes.
Thank you.
We don't need any action on this item. Thank you, Ms. Callahan. Item number 4.
Consider approval of a mutual aid agreement between the City of Muskogee Fire Department and Camp Gruber, or take other necessary action.
Chief Jones.
Good evening, Chairman and Council, Committee. I was recently approached by the Camp Gruber Assistant Fire Chief. It's a newly established department at Camp Gruber pertaining to mutual fire assistance agreement between Camp Gruber and the Muskogee Fire Department. The mutual aid agreement is the same agreement that we currently have with all our volunteer fire departments. The Camp Gruber Fire Department is a professional department. It's federally funded, and the equipment and their manpower is equivalent to ours. I would recommend your approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Tracy Hoos.
Yes.
Tracy McGee.
Yes.
Stephanie Morgan.
Yes.
Alex Reynolds.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Derek Reed.
Yes.
Mayor Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
The motion passes. Item number 5.
Receive update on drainage issues within Eagle Crest Addition per City Council direction and take necessary action.
Yes, Madam Chairman. We were asked to come back and give you an update on the progress that we're making with the Eagle Crest drainage situation. So after our meeting, when we decided the plan of action that we were going to take, with Mr. Garvin's assistance, his department put together a pretty good map of the property with all the easements and with all the ordinances on it, so that we knew exactly what was ours to maintain and where we needed to get access agreements. The very next day, and it may have been the day after, but Mr. Garvin and I actually went out to Eagle Crest and went to each area and looked at it to ensure that everything that's the city's to maintain was maintained as well as we could, and to try to figure out some plans of action to improve even those areas. So I appreciate Mr. Garvin's assistance on that. We actually checked under the bridge on 40th Street to make sure that those barrels were open. And when I say barrels, I mean the spans that go underneath the bridge itself. And we looked and ensured that they were open. I also asked Jason Green, who is our environmental control superintendent, to walk out the property that is east, get my bearings straight, of 40th Street, which is the Cybold property, which goes over to 32nd Street. He walked that out. He took photos. I've got about 15 photos here with longs and lats on it where he walked that entire drainage channel out. We were surprised to find that there were no beaver dams in there, and that the pathway for the water was actually open. By the way, we intend to walk it out again as soon as this foliage goes away, because we'll be able to see even better. We, at this time, have been trying to contact Mr. Cybold to get access to it if we do discover something in there that we need to go clean, but at this point we did not. One of the things that you instructed us to do was to put together a master drainage plan for the entire community. That has been prepared, and that actually went out for advertisements today. This is not just for the Eagle Crest Addition, this is for the entire community, which will include Eagle Crest, as we get to the point where we decide what engineering firm that we're going to choose to do this. we'll be looking to council to approve the manager to negotiate a contract, and at that time, we can designate areas and priorities. We also, when Mr. Garvin and I went out there, we looked at the channel that is beside the Hopkins house, and discussed some different ways that we might be able to address that water standing in that channel. And one of the things that we decided to do upon approval of the Hopkins was to go in there and take the bottom of that channel out that goes beside their house and put it back in washed stone, so that it would allow the water to dissipate until we could get approval to go ahead and open that channel up on the downstream side of it. We have also been in contact with Mr. Coppage, with Manager Miller's assistance, and we're putting together a letter that will state just exactly what we want to go in there and clean, the depths and widths, and that way we can obtain an access, right-of-way access agreement with him to do that work. That letter I hope to have prepared for Mr. Miller tomorrow, and we can get that out. Be happy to answer any questions, but that's where we are on this project currently.
Any questions of Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll be recognized.
Yes.
You know, Mr. Miller, I'm sorry, Mr. Stewart, right there where the Hopkins live, on up going back, that would be west. Remember when we put that box in? I forgot the gentleman's name. We put a box in right there. It was a box in his backyard. And Mr. Coppage.
Yeah. Jim Dixon's.
Yeah. Okay. When we put the box in, Mr. Coppage, we tried to get him to dig that out so it can go and drain. I know that hadn't been done, have it?
So somebody had actually gone in there, Mr. Van, and cleaned that out just a little bit, because the water in the catch basin level at the street had actually dropped, which tells me that it's running out. It does need to be dug out a little better, and that's one of the areas that we're identifying as part to get the access agreement to.
Okay.
And it needs to be cleaned, 20, 30 feet further, with a little bit more width, maybe 2 to 3 foot wide. We're trying to get in there and make it so that it will drain, but not be so obstructive to Mr. Coppage that he'll allow us to continue to do that.
Did you also check with going back on Eagle Crest Drive? You turn right and go back north. It's a cul-de-sac right in there.
So there's a drainage channel that is piped. It's actually a plastic pipe that goes back, and it opens right by a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And where that tree is, there's water standing, and that needs to be opened back up at least to that fence back there.
So
yes, we did identify that too, Mr. Garvin and I. We actually walked out there and stuck a stick in it, made sure we knew how deep it was, and but we did do that.
Okay. You also identified, you said under the bridge, and you said the people that owns the property across the street going east.
Yeah.
What's the name?
Seibold.
Seibold. Okay. Y'all said y'all walked that?
Jason Green walked it, actually walked it today, took pictures. I've got some pretty good pictures. There's about 20 of them with longs and lats everywhere that he was at in that channel. Because again, we expected to find beaver dams in there, and we did not. But that's not to say there weren't some in there that the water, when there's high flow, didn't take them out. There was no signs of it. There are some tires and there are some standing pools back in there, but nothing that wouldn't be expected to be in a creek bottom. But it does look like it would carry the flow pretty well.
The reason I was curious about that, because if it's going across on that bridge and it's still backing up covering that road, I'm talking about the one on the north end. If it's still going back covering that road and it's going across the people's property, that tells me that that water's not draining that good.
So we walked the entire thing out, and I've got some pretty good pictures. And again, when this foliage goes down, we're going to do it again.
Okay.
And as soon as we get Mr. Seibold's property, we may be going in there and making some wider pieces of that channel, but it's pretty well open.
I think that's what needs to be done.
I was kind of surprised, to be honest with you. I expected to find beaver dams in there.
Now, where's it go after that?
To 32nd Street?
Yeah.
We did not go beyond there, but I'm assuming it goes to Cootie Creek, because everything goes that direction, goes to Cootie Creek.
Okay. When the foliage gets clean and everything, and we're going back in there and walk, then we can walk all that out to see exactly where this goes, and if Cootie Creek needs something done, let's do it too while we're at it.
As long as we can get access agreement and have the right of entry, we'll do it.
Okay. Also, the next bridge going back south, where we doing that?
I'm sorry, I don't know where you're talking about. Gotta
Going
get my
south
mind
on
on it.
40th Street. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, going south on 40th Street. Like where you turn into Eagle Crest, I call that the North Street Bridge.
Right.
Next one up, I call it the South Street Bridge, the South Bridge.
So the big one is the one that would be the furthest north from Eagle
Right.
Crest entrance.
That's the biggest one.
And the south one, I'm not familiar with.
Y'all didn't look at that one?
No, I'm not pulling that one up. Jason went and looked at it, and he told me it was open, but I don't have a visual on it.
Because it floods just like the one on the north side.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
all.
make sure it's checked.
Okay.
I know it already has been, but I didn't personally, so I'll go out and look at it.
Because I didn't know if it came out to the east, then
So-
went down back to the north, and went and tied into that one.
So I've got a pretty good map. There's 3 actual channels that go across Seibold's property. And that's the one I think that you're talking about that's on the south. And he was looking at that one too, but reported them all open.
Okay, so Mr. Sabo owns both of them.
Pretty good piece of property. I'll be glad to share it with you if you'd like to look at it.
Okay, we're just trying to get this thing right, Mike, so next time this rain comes,
So
maybe
as
we'll
many
have
times as I've been up here to address Eagle Crest, nobody wants it right more than I do.
I agree, Mike. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there on that one, Mike. Well, I appreciate your report, sir, and I believe we will be, like I say, hope we don't have to take a vote next time and start towing.
All right.
Turn the floor back over, Ms. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. We don't need any action on that, do we, Roy?
Nope, but you've got some people, I think, signed up.
We have 2 citizens signed up to speak.
Yeah, just for that one, if they wanna do that one first.
No, he needs to be last.
Okay.
You can take me off.
So, okay, you don't wanna.
Mr. Hopkins, would you please come to the podium and give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes?
My name is Robin Hopkins. I live at 4104 Eagle Crest Drive. And I just want to make one statement. I think I'm more interested in that than you are, Mike. I would like to be involved in the planning of that, because I've looked at it for over 30 years and I have a lot of input on it, just like I did on the ditch beside my house. And if you don't mind, I would like to walk that with him and see it for myself, because I'd still like to address the water from this detention pond to go south through that second south bridge. I think it'd be influential to us not to have that water coming towards us anyways, but I know that's another issue. So that's all I have to say. Thank you and good luck.
That concludes our agenda for this evening, and we are adjourned.